Well, first of all, I've only been here for 4 months, and there's a lot, we've done a lot of things in the 4 months, but before that I was previously Principal of the International School of New York. So you can imagine there's a huge difference between New York and Gouna. One of the big differences for me is that Gouna is a place whereby the school is at the heart of the community. The size of the community lends itself to having what I would like to call a community school. Therefore, for me, one of the big things is that in the school, the whole community feels as if they've got a part to play. I'll give you an example. Recently, one of the swimming academies came to me and said, we would like to do something with the school. And they did. And what they've done over the last few weeks is that every student now has been taught emergency first aid. So one of the things for me was that I want people in the community to feel as if this place belongs to them. And from that, we have this great sense that it's not only just for the students within the school and their families, but it's for the community as a whole. Because I think that's the reason that the school was first founded. You know, Mr. EGIS, when he had the vision of Gouna, had a sense of a place whereby people could come and live well. For me, one of the big things for me is that I want a place whereby people can come and learn well. And for me, one of the basics for good learning is to have a good sense of well-being. And I think one of the great things about Gouna, being a resort town, is that there is not the same sense of busyness, there's not the same sense of pollution, there's not the same sense of crime, there's not the same sense of that people feel nervous or tense. People can feel and be themselves. And if you get children who can feel and be themselves, for me that's a great starting point for them to develop academically as well. I started off as a principal of a school in the UK, and the school I went to, within 6 weeks of that school, the school was about to be closed down. And some of my friends told me I was crazy to go there in the first place. But I encouraged the government at the time, Ofsted. I asked them, give me 6 months. And then after 6 months, make a judgment then. And what I loved about that school in particular was that the children had the same aspirations as any other children in some of the most successful schools in England and Wales. The problem was that we were not giving them channels in which to develop, to reach those aspirations. Same for children here in Egypt. Children here in this school and any other school in Egypt had the same aspirations as any other children in the world. They believe that they want to be successful. They might want to go into university, they might want to be doctors, lawyers, accountants, engineers, whatever. But one of the big things for them is that sometimes what can hinder them is the sense that perhaps the country is not as developed as other countries. But for me, it's in my mind is that the children that I have the pleasure and the privilege of helping to educate are the people who are going to develop this country. For me, what I have to do is, I have to educate the children for the jobs which haven't even been created yet. Because really what's got to happen is that the children who leave this school and go into university and go into a great life have to think as children in this country have never thought before. They have got to think like children in developed countries like America, like for example the UK, because hopefully they will leave here, they will go and learn and develop in those countries and bring those skills and those talents back. And the number of children who actually go and do that, the country itself will develop. No, not really. I'll tell you why. Because the good international schools are accredited by good organisations. For example, we are a member of BSME, British Schools in the Middle East, and they have very, very, very similar expectations and standards to, for example, British Ofsted, because it's British Ofsted inspectors who come and visit the school and have an opportunity for us to show that we are of the same standard. That's the only way we get accreditation. There are some schools, for example, who have CIS, who are members of that. And it's very, very important that international schools do have proper accreditation, because the accreditation should be the standard and the quality assurance of what the teaching and learning is happening inside. So regardless of not having Ofsted, international schools should have proper accreditation. One of the big things for me was when I came here 4 months ago, is that when I realised and spent some time talking to the students and the parents, etc., I became very, very aware that lots of parents themselves had anxieties about their children being sent off to different parts of the world or to Cairo and becoming independent. When we live in Gouna, because of the size, because of it being a community in which everyone knows each other, it can be a culture shock from moving from here to somewhere else. And for me, one of the biggest things for me is that students themselves should have the opportunities to be successful. And barriers should not be in place. For example, you talked earlier about personal development. One of the big things that I want to do in the year 13 is to give them more opportunities to develop their personalities. The academics can look after themselves. For me, I want to focus on the development, the personality development. So, for example, I want our students in year 13 to act as buddies and mentors for younger students. So it gives them an opportunity to lead. I want to introduce leadership courses for them. Again, give them opportunities to develop skills and talents which otherwise they'd realise they didn't have. The other part of that also is that, regarding for national students, the jump from the national curriculum to the British curriculum is huge. And what I wanted to do is, by having a year 13, effectively students can move from the national, Prep 1, moving over to the international, which would be equivalent of year 9. And then, for example, they would have a 3-year preparation for IGCSEs. At the end of that then, they also then can have 2 years of AS and A levels, which gives them 5 years to develop their own independent learning. Because, as you're very well aware, to survive in university or to survive in the business world, you have to be independent of thought, you have to be active, you have to be team players, and so therefore it gives them an opportunity to do that. So for me, having a year 13 was an ideal vehicle to make that happen. Just mentioned to you earlier about the first aid, etc., and that was a big thing for us because obviously living in a resort town, we're surrounded by water. So it's very, very important that, for example, our students are well prepared for accidents perhaps by water, swimming pools, etc. The other thing that we've done is that we have got in with Gouna, because Gouna, etc., is very, very big on the environment. We have a big focus regarding recycling. We have also a big focus regarding carbon emissions. The school should be involved in that. So one of the big things is, for example, next week we're having Gouna Earth Week, and the students are going to be involved in the beach cleanup, which is a very, very important thing. Because if we live in this community, then we have got to take an active part in this community. And also what we're doing is, we're not only developing students who can actively learn, but I want students who are going to be active citizens. I want them to have respect for where they live. So for me, that's a big, big, big area. Also, we have had a project which is EGIS has got talent. Last week we had the semi-finals of EGIS has got talent, and on the 29th of May we have the grand final. This has been a wonderful vehicle to bring the whole community together. And what we've basically done is we've unearthed, I'm delighted to say, gems. I'll give you an example. We had a quarter final in the school hall, and a year 9 student, and he was one of the boys, Nicholas, who you interviewed earlier, he sat behind a piano. No one had ever seen him sitting behind a piano before. And he started to play. And then he started to sing. And the whole hall went quiet. No one knew he writes songs. No one knew he could sing. And for me, by having the EGIS Got Talent open to the community, it was showing the community that this school is more than about A stars, A's, B's and C's. A good school is about developing the person as well as developing the mind. I think I'll give you one of the saddest moments and one of the happiest moments.
All right.
One of the saddest moments is that when I was principal in Malaysia, I got a phone call at 2 AM in the morning, and I went to a girl's house who was aged 50, and the girl had committed suicide. And the girl had committed suicide because of the pressure she'd been put under regarding exams. She couldn't cope. And she was under so much pressure, and she never told anyone. So, as a school principal, that was devastating for me. And going into school the next morning, bringing the whole school community together and telling them that one of their fellow pupils was no longer with us, probably the hardest thing I've ever had to do. But as a person, I learned from that. And what I learned from that is that a school has to have balance. And one of the big things for me is that I spend lots of time encouraging parents to have balance. One of the happiest times for me was actually here in the last 4 months, was when I saw the sports day. We had a sports day in March, and I watched the sports day, and I've never ever seen a little girl in Foundation 2, and she came up and she gave me this big hug, and she said to me, "Thank you for coming to our school." And again, as a principal, there's no nicer feeling that one of the students can appreciate the things that you're trying to do. Because for me, the most important thing is that everything we do should be geared towards them. Our school has a school motto, and the school motto is quite simple. Success for everyone, opportunity for all. Because for me, a good school is a school whereby everyone has the opportunity to be successful.